So as Giulio already said, I'm giving a short summary on time. The longer story, you can check our poster. Me and Matteo have a poster on Thursday, and also the archive should be online soon. So if you want to check out the longer story or talk with us, we'll be available on Thursday. So as with space, in the case of time, we're interested in how time is experienced, how it's phenomenally lived through, the flow of time, the present experiences, and not the physical time, the sense of events in the brain, not in the sense of the cognitive time of, say, accessing memories or of judging, being able to judge and distinguish, even if that's also relevant. And I think probably the best way to illustrate in useful ways with the experiencing of music. So as Matteo showed the blank screen and the spots, I'm gonna show, see if it works. But here are the initial bars of the Fifth Symphony. I think everyone will recognize. So let's just take a moment to hear and try to attend to how this feels like. But yeah, so I think now that you've heard the music and the echo, it's already gone, it's past. So you need memory to remember it. And that's not what we're interested in. We're interested in the moment you are hearing the notes. We don't seem to experience each note as this sort of like instantaneous, separate experience, but many people have noticed that we actually experience within a single experience. We can distinguish many moments within it, as when the last note was playing, we could still hear, in a sense, the three notes that had just been played, all within a single present experience. So we call the moments that are still present in the now, towards the now, and the ones that have just passed that appear less vivid, they are moments that are towards the then. And the central thing here is that in the experience of time, the moments within a single experience seems to flow one to the other, sort of fading out in a sense, and pointing one to the next one. Very different from when we stare at the blank screen and see the spots, and the spots are just sitting there, pointing out to themselves. In the case of time, we always have this sort of directedness, one note pointing towards the other one. But this would be true also if we didn't hear any notes, and arguably, even in silence, this is still the case. So, once again, in the case of time, we started by identifying which are these basic properties that make up temporal experiences. And the basic building block here are moments instead of spots. Moments within a single experience can be as short as instants, but they can be as long as the full species present, which was the term that William James sort of proposed, and which has been tried to estimate it experimentally, has been placed as something between 200 milliseconds and up to 2 seconds, down to instants, the sort of like finer moments that we can distinguish phenomenally, that also somewhere between 20 milliseconds and 60 milliseconds. And the first characteristic, the central notion, is that moments are directness, as I said. They point away from themselves. Call that directness. And a bit like space, moments also can include each other. They also connect, they also fuse, but they do so in a directed way. So for example, a moment can include another. Say a note can include a sort of like longer tone that is presented, but it can include towards the now or towards the then. So there's a directionality that in space is not present. Moreover, from these basic properties, we can also derive some more familiar properties like the duration, the interval, periods, even the fact that we feel centered in the now and sort of like witness this moment's going away towards the then. But these are sort of derived properties that we can kind of extract from these 4 basic essential properties. And once again, we unfold a proposed substrate that we show here, that if we unfold the 1D directed grids, so not undirected as with space, but directed grids with stronger lateral connections in one direction. And here we conjecture that they might be found in, for example, auditory cortices, which is another difference from space, in which we know a lot about the substrate of visual and spatial experience. In the case of time, there's a lot of we don't know really. But the important thing is that we show that once we unfold directed grids into this cause-effect structure and look at it, we can also recover again here the properties that we found in phenomenology. So just to give a quick, short idea of what this means, the first thing to notice once we unfold it is that the distinctions that we find in the directed grids, they don't exhibit the reflexivity between causes and effect that undirected grids shows. Here, the causes, I don't know if you can see it, but the effects and the causes, which are shown in green and red, they don't fully overlap. They are sort of like misaligned, which makes the effects relate to a part of the cause-effect structure that the causes don't align. So we get this directedness, which induces many other properties, like the way that distinctions will include each other. It will happen also in a directed way. It will happen towards the effects or towards the causes, which also gives you the directed inclusion that we find towards the now, towards the then, and so on and so forth for directed connection, directed fusion. So once again, here we unfold the substrate, 1D directed grids, and show that we can find a correspondence, a one-to-one correspondence that can account for these properties of phenomenal time. So up above, you can see a sort of schematic of 4 distinctions, and this holds true for the whole cause-effect structure of directed grids, and that's the general sort of gist where we went. And now we can, once we have this picture, this idea that the unfolded cause-effect structure of directed grids correspond to the phenomenal experience of time, we may ask, how does this relate to the clock time, to the unfolding of events, the sequence of brain activity, the percolation of activations in this directed grid, the fact that there might be a sequence of cause-effect structures. So, but the picture that emerges is that rather, which perhaps is counterintuitive, but I think also possibly very reasonable, is that at each moment, at each macro update, we call it, say 30 milliseconds, there exists the single cause-effect structure, which corresponds to the duration of the whole duration of the species present, say 1 second. So we have this sort of mismatch between the physical clock time on which the cause-effect structure is unfolded of, say, 330 milliseconds, and the actual duration that it corresponds, for example, the full present. So the temporal experience here in this view, it's a structure, it's not a process. It's not the percolation, it's not the sequence of cause-effect structure, it's a single structure. And it's the internal organization of this cause-effect structure that gives you the phenomenal flow of time. And the interesting thing is that it turns out that time feels flowing, but nothing really flows at all. You have just this structure that is static in the sense that actually is what we propose may account for the phenomenal flow of time. And just to finish and recapitulate once again the methodology, we start from experience, we can distinguish different kinds of experience, spatial experiences, temporal experiences. And by identifying these properties, we can unfold different types of substrates and check whether the properties of these cause-effect structures can be mapped, can correspond to these properties that we identified. So in the case of space, we find this reflexive topology in which the properties of the cause-effect structure maps onto the properties that spots compose into an extendedness. And in the case of time, of a directed grid, we find this directed causal distinctions that compose in a way that we can say feels composed into a phenomenal flow. And both of them leave us substructures of a sort of broader single cause-effect structure corresponding to the whole experience.
Can I ask a question? Overall, it makes sense to me, but the point about the non-existence of the reflexivity and the directedness, it's still difficult for me to understand. So one thing, for example, simultaneity of experience. When I was thinking about it, it could occur within the, let's say, two different frequencies of the tone to be felt simultaneous, or two spots of the bright thing on the space, appearing and then disappearing at the same time, or many kind of things can be felt as simultaneous, right? And then one possibility of explaining that may be that there is this reflexive arrow at the higher order kind of existence of the things. Like if A and B in that grid is felt simultaneously, then AB also has the reflexivity or self-referential arrow or something like that. So here the entire thing is composing some kind of pyramid, right?
No. So here is not the pyramid that we talk about. You would need further mechanisms that could pick out some distinctions. What you get out of this cause-effect structure is the possibility of ordering moments within a single experience. So by virtue of being directed and sort of like connecting in a directed way, fusing in a directed way, we can sort of like distinguish moments that succeed and precede each other. So they form a temporal order, this distinction, in a way that the spatial distinctions cannot be ordered.
Yeah,
so here, say it's a simple directed grid, so you can't really talk about like two tones being sort of simultaneous, but the pink node and the blue node within the single cause-effect structure, they appear as sort of like following each other rather than being in the same moment, experiencing the same moment.
So as long as we are thinking about sort of phenomenology in one dimension, then there is even no kind of a concept of simultaneity then. But simultaneity is one of the sort of the fundamental kind of phenomenological impression about time, I feel. The flow is definitely one thing, but you also feel like, something happened at the same time or ended in same time. Is it the kind of concept that emerged only through space-time interaction or many lines of the 1D grid? That's sort of my question.
You say so?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no, I think you get the temporal ordering already appearing in phenomenal experience, and simultaneity would merely be the fact that were there to be some sort of like distinctions that we can sort of like distinguish different tones. The fact that they appear sort of like within the same vertical kind of temporal location would mean that they are simultaneous. So you could maybe imagine that by imagining like a longer moment and a shorter one. So this inclusion would sort of like, it could be towards the then, it could be towards the now, or it could be sort of like non-aligned, sort of just aligned. In that case, this shorter moment would be simultaneous to this longer moment. So maybe that's a way to see. If we were aligned towards the then, it would be experienced as not really simultaneous, as one having started before the other. If it was aligned towards the now, it would be the opposite case. So you get the sort of coincidence just by seeing how moments include each other.
But I think, I think now probably we're referring to the idea, since you mentioned two different frequencies. If you hear, a chord and there are 3 notes in it, that compose the chord, the local quality, meaning the pitch and so on, we'll forget about that. That's like color for space. We are not going to discuss that. That is the different kind of thing. But the idea is exactly that there are a bunch of directed grids like this, for instance, as we know from topic cortex, 1 for each frequency or frequency band, and that they are indeed perceived simultaneously because they are part of one larger substrate with also larger interactions among the different frequency bands, such they sort of flow in unison, literally. So in that sense, yes. But again, as for space, I think I want to make that very clear. We are going for the most basic aspects so we can connect substrate, unfolded cause-effect structure, and phenomenology, rather than trying to get into the complexities of very interesting, illusions. So that at some point might come, but right now we need to get the building blocks, which brings me back to the, issue of the, let's just leave that out now, just a summary, the issue of the research program we started with this afternoon,